everybody. Welcome to Mormonish. I'm Rebecca.
And I'm Landon.
And I feel like Ganesh, you should just say, and I'm
Ganesh.
Ganesh.
That's it. The three amigos back together again. So this is a podcast that we have promised was going to come out. And I have to say that it's coming out on a special day for us. And that is our 300th episode. Can you believe that, Landon?
Wow, 300.
Yeah, I know.
That's hard to believe.
Like I'm all excited about it, and Landon's like, "Oh my God, the hours I've spent sitting in this chair." So, oh my gosh, my dog is squeaking a new squeaky toy. I hope that doesn't come across. It's like, eek, 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 eek. Anyway, I digress. So we did a podcast. I think by this point it would have been about 3 weeks ago that it aired with Ganesh, and we talked about Joseph Smith and all kinds of things. And he said one little thing. It was a very small part of the podcast about what may have really happened on that fateful night, the trip to the Hill Cumorah. And I don't know if anybody heard anything else in that podcast, although it was amazing, but they did hear that part. And I've seen it reposted. I have seen people saying, "How do you know that?" and asking about it. It has caused quite a bit of buzz because, of course, as the song goes, let's talk about sex, baby, right? Remember that song? Yeah, exactly. This is what we're talking about. And so we said we need to just dig a little bit deeper. We need to have a little bit more follow-up. We need to have some of the receipts. So Ganesh was nice enough to say, sure, I'll come on and talk about that topic specifically, right?
Yes, and it is a fascinating topic. And it's about Joseph and Emma's sex life, which, is appealing in the sense of knowing that these people are real people, but also some of their stuff was a little edgy, or at least it might need a little bit of clarification.
Yes.
And there's nothing Mormons like better than asking about other people's sex lives. So let's get started.
I have to say, I can't think of a more perfect topic for our 300th episode. I knew that where we started, we would devolve to this. This would be it. By number 300.
300 episodes later.
Sex life. This is what we're left with. But no, this is actually absolutely fascinating. And I know that because we were fascinated, Landon, as Ganesh just kind of threw it out there in the podcast. We were like, wait, what? Shut the door there. And then everybody else that started posting about it, contacting us about it personally, going, what did Ganesh say? Where's some information? So we are happy to be able to now just dive into that topic and with a little more detail.
Fabulous. Well, the Michael Marquardt was the person who first told me about this, and I've since gone and had a look at the reasons why we believe that Joseph and Emma had sex on the Hill Cumorah on that fateful night. There's actually quite a lot to substantiate it. So I'm excited about going through, because there definitely has been some people who have been extremely skeptical. And look, to be fair, history is a little bit of investigation and detective work, and you're dealing with just bits of information, which means you may not always get it right. But so we can only kind of say it's highly probable rather than we can be exact. But there are some good reasons to believe this, and we'll go through those today.
Fantastic. And as usual, Ganesh has amazing slides, and we had some fun with AI earlier today, didn't we, Ganesh? So.
We did.
I think it's important what you just said there, Ganesh, that there's no way we can know any more than anyone can know when anyone else had sex at a certain place.
Especially hundreds of years later, right?
Hundreds of years later, you're trying to prove that. And so we're not saying it definitely happened, but there's a likelihood, and it makes sense when you start looking at it, that this very likely could have happened. So I will say this: it's more likely that this happened than an angel showed up with golden plates on the Hill Cumorah that night. So and I think we've probably got more proof that this happened than that the angel showed up with golden plates.
Good point.
That is so true. Hang on. All right, so here's that picture that Rebecca did earlier, and the idea that there might be something going on in the buggy with Joseph and Emma on their trek to the Hill Cumorah that fateful night of the 21st and 22nd of September.
And I have to blame Dr. John Lundwall, our friend and co-conspirator, for this picture, because I made the buggy, with hearts coming out of it. And I sent it to him. He goes, "Oh, no, you need Angel Moroni peeking into the buggy." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, you're so bad." So here it is.
Well, that's quite an interesting idea, that who might have been there that night, and the kinds of stories that might have been told. So it's apt, and hopefully we'll be able to give some grounding to it as we go along. And that is really kind of what happened on that hill that day. What is the basis for Moroni Day? And that, and John is a great person for making that link between that treasure digging culture of Western New York that Joseph was involved in, and the Book of Mormon. So yeah, it's a big thing to have a look at. And of course, So I thought, first off, just to kind of set the scene, we'd kind of give you a little bit of a map of where everything is, where everybody is that night, and where the Hill Cumorah is. If you've been to the church sites in Palmyra, you know the kind of spatial awareness. And when I went there, it was really interesting to see that the Smiths are just a few miles out of town, out of Palmyra village, which is a significant town. And they first made their home next to a property in a log cabin. And this is what's up in the top left corner. That's their first home. That's the log cabin that we talk about Joseph in 1823 getting a visitor who told him about these plates, and we suggest that happened upstairs in the boys' bedroom of that particular log cabin. But by the time that Joseph was back in Harmony, Pennsylvania, back in Palmyra with his wife Emma in 1827, the Smiths had built this frame house, this white frame house that's on the right, and that was just south of the log house, and it's a much bigger, better accommodation, as you can roughly tell. And by this point in 1827, Hiram had already married Jerusha, and they were living in the log house, the old family log house. And so Joseph was there with Emma, with the parents, and the other siblings in the house, in the frame house. And we know, and we're going to talk about it in a minute, that Joseph Knight Sr. was there, and Emma also says that Josiah Stoll was with him. So there was a lot of people at the house that particular night.
That's a full house.
It's a full house. More than usual. But it's already pretty full anyway. And it's, I've been in that house. It's, the walls are thin. They're very close together. There's not a lot of privacy there. And the Hill Cumorah is about 3 to 4 miles away from the house. So it's a decent walk. It would take you a good hour and a bit to walk there. But in a horse and buggy, you can cover the distance in maybe 20 minutes. So it just gives you a kind of a lay of the land and what's going on there. And the topic that got all of this pushback from the last podcast that we did was the idea that Joseph and Emma conceived their baby on that fateful night. And we know this from the gestation date. So and you can do this yourself. You can go online and look up, if you know what the date of conception is, and you put it to the 22nd of September, and you do a calculation, it tells you your baby is due on the 15th of June. And baby Alvin was born and died on the 15th of June. And I've got a picture of his headstone and the date that's on that. So we know that these events happened, right? We know that the baby was born. We know that the baby died. and we know it was the 15th of June, and we can track that back to that particular time frame. Now, of course, having a baby is not an exact science. It may come early, it may come a little late. The days of conception can be 2 or 3 days outside of that period. So this is very strong evidence, but it doesn't prove things. But there are a number of things going around on that particular date that give us some confidence that there is that this happened that particular night at that particular location. So I've listed out a few things that I think are worthwhile investigating, so that we can understand the circumstances surrounding the conception. And maybe Landon, do you want to just take us through those points first off, and then we'll talk about them in detail.
These are the circumstances surrounding the conception. Joseph finding the right person to bring to the hill, and it being Emma, suggests a special reason. Joseph didn't have his own home. He had 6 siblings. Those walls are thin. Privacy is at a premium. Sex was likely infrequent even for newlyweds. The Smith's frame house was especially full for a few days. Joseph Knight Sr. and Josiah Stoll were staying multiple nights. The buggy and a night out together with no one around was a rare occurrence. Some treasure digging ceremonies are attached to sex. After that night, they were in constant alert. Neighbors trying to get the plates, watching the house, anticipation of attack. Opportunities to get alone time would have been difficult. And the fact that Joseph believed the child was incredibly special suggests he connected the conception and the retrieval of the plates. The ceremony was successful and the treasure obtained.
Yeah. One of the big things that early 19th century Americans, particularly those who were farming on the frontier, had to face was that they needed to get as much work done, secure their future as quickly as possible. The Smiths had 11 children all up, and that was common for the time, the idea that your children would be your labor force. But you also had this kind of situation, particularly with the boys, where you needed them to work hard on the land because they were going to be your workforce. But at some point, they were going to want to have their own farms and their own families. And so there was this kind of tension between, providing for the family and then also being able to have enough spare to give them something so that they could start their own families. And that's what happened to Hiram. Actually, it also happened to Alvin. Alvin was engaged to be married when he died in 1823. So he was just about ready to move out of home, start his own family, that was probably one of the emphasis is for the frame house, was that would then be the comfortable place for the parents and the rest of the family, and then Alvin would move into the log house. And that's what happened to Hiram. Hiram married Jerusha earlier in 1827, and he had then moved into 1826. He had moved into the log house with her, and they'd expecting their first baby, or they had their first baby. So this was the next iteration. But remember, Joseph, there was nothing for Joseph. The family was incredibly poor. They didn't have any extra. And Joseph eloped, right? He got Emma. He might have had support from her family, but he basically stole her and took her away. And there was no place prepared for them to live. So they ended up living with the Smiths in the frame house. And we know from other statements that Emma was deeply unhappy. And this was probably something that was a really big deal for Joseph and the Smith families, that she was unhappy. She'd come from relative wealth. We showed in that last podcast her really nice home that she'd come from, her really nice stuff that she had, and now she was living in abject poverty in this crowded house with Joseph's family, thinking, what the heck have I done? Which also suggests that she probably wasn't very excited about starting a family at this point, or maybe even wanting to be near to Joseph or thinking about a future with him, because it looked pretty dire and it was, not much, it didn't seem very happy. So they probably didn't have sex very often because the house was full, but they probably also didn't have sex because Emma was feeling so terrible and was worried about whether she'd made a mistake and whether she really wanted this relationship. So partly when we're talking about the hill and this special night out for the two, this may have been Joseph's kind of big, Hail Mary to kind of convince Emma that he was worth it, that she should be with him, and that they should start a family. So these are all things that are playing on in the background.
Yeah, this is a great list. I mean, the privacy things are really interesting, but there are several points, if you go back, that I think a lot of us are like, wait, what? For example, right in the middle, if you go back one slide, I don't know if you can, where it says that sex could be part of a treasure digging ceremony. And, I had known that love spells and treasure digging were connected. So there's a parallel right there, but that makes a lot of sense. Power in a sexual experience, making the treasure easier to get. You can see Joseph, kind of maybe believing in that kind of thing. Maybe that's part of it. That probably needs to be explored a little more. And then I think the part that a lot of us were unaware of was the special child, the idea that a special child would come forth that could see the plates. I had never heard that before. And that puts a whole new trajectory on the whole thing, and the idea that Emma is the special person that needs to go there. I think most of us have heard that, but as Landon brought up, well, what was her purpose there? The church's narrative is she stands there and makes sure the buggy doesn't leave, just kind of stands there. There's got to be another purpose if she's so special. So those three things, and then in addition to how you lay out the privacy, to me, that was extremely intriguing. Don't you agree, Landon?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the next slide kind of goes into the Emma being the right person, because
right.
I did want to talk a little
each
bit
one of
about
those
that.
needs to be explored a little more for sure.
Well, yeah, we'll go through them so we can get an understanding of that, and maybe Rebecca, you can give us this slide here.
Okay, this is Joseph Knight Sr., 1835 to 1847, the right person. Yeah, like I said, that's super intriguing, that part. He, Joseph, exclaimed, "Why can't I stir this book?" And he was answered by the personage, "You have not done right. You should have took the book and gone right away. You can't have it now." Joseph says, "When can I have it?" I just love this. I wish they would keep this in the, what people would read in gospel doctrine. Brother Brown, can you reach? Certainly I can. Gone away. I can't have it. I wish that was our LDS Sunday school. Sorry, tangent, but I'm just saying. So he says, Joseph says, "Well, when can I have it?" The answer was the 22nd day of September, which of course, ironically, is an extremely magical day, right? Being the solstice and all that. Next, if you bring the right person with you, Joseph says, "But who is the right person?" The answer was your oldest brother. But before September came, his oldest brother, that would be Alvin, died when he was disappointed and did not know what to do. But when the 22nd day of September came, he went to the place, and the personage appeared and told him he could not have it now. But the 22nd day of September next, he might have the book if he brought the right person with him. Again, this reminds me of like a fairy tale, right? It's always 3 or 4 times somebody goes back and tries, and they have to do certain things. It really is a very magical story when you look at it through those lenses. So he might have the book if he brought the right person with him. Joseph says, "But who is the right person?" The answer was, "You will know." Then he looked in his glass and he found it was Emma Hale, daughter of old Mr. Hale of Pennsylvania. a girl he had seen before, for he had been down there before with me. And that's when Joseph Knight helps secure the elopement. So that's so interesting. It's always bring this person, bring that person, God is such a trickster God. You have the whole salvation of all mankind in the whole history of the world. And what is it hanging on? These little tricks for a practically teenager, little tricks. Nope, come back. Nope, come back. It's just like a fairy tale.
Well, to me,
and there were so many tricks,
yep,
and I think
so many tricks. Trickster God.
This was just like a treasure dig that he always did before.
Mm-hmm.
He would look in his hat, he would see a treasure, he'd tell the guys where to go to get the treasure, but then as soon as they went to get it, it slipped away, and the treasure angel would say, would move it. And this is exactly what's happening with the plates. He's going to go get them, and then the treasure angel says, "Oh, nope, you have to bring your brother Alvin, and he's next year bring him." They slipped away from his hands, and the next year Alvin's dead. So what's he going to do to get the plates? And of course, we all know the story about Alvin being dug up at that very time of the year within a couple days. And they put in the paper, he wasn't stolen, we didn't steal him, we dug him up to prove we didn't steal him. Well, did
Brilliant.
they? Did they try to get some piece of Alvin and take it to try to get the plates? And again, whatever they did, it didn't work. And then he took that other glass looker that, remember, they were wandering around the hill looking in their peep stones, and then the one said, "Oh, I see a sword, and all these other devices start showing up." Yep, and soon I think Joseph said, "Oh, this guy's competition," and so he didn't bring him. But finally, he brings Emma, and he takes Emma up to the hill, and he sees her in a glass, and then all of a sudden he knows, this is who I need to have, and he goes and he marries her, he steals her away, he elopes with her.
Yep.
Why? So that he can bring her back. He clearly believes that he has to have a person to satisfy this treasure angel, just like he has in all the other treasure digs that he had. He's got to somehow appease this treasure angel so that it doesn't disappear again. And Emma seems to be the person. But then you have to ask the question: God said you must bring somebody, or through his angel, he said you must bring somebody. And then he goes through 3 years of bringing people, trying to figure it out. He brings Emma, and what does she do?
Yeah.
She's not any part of this story. She rides along with him and holds the horses while he goes up the hill. This was so important that he got the right person there, and she didn't seem to play any part in this. So the fact that she may have been part of a ritual, ritual magic, sexual ritual magic, in order to get the plates is very possible, knowing what we know about magic in this time frame. So, as I started thinking about it, I went, yeah, why did he have to take Emma? She didn't do anything in the story to help. Ganesh, what you provide may provide an answer, that he's got to do a special ceremony, bring forth a golden child that comes along with the golden plates, and allows him to finally obtain the plates because he did this ceremonial magic right on the hill.
We don't know exactly, of course, but it could be the exact opposite way, right? He's justifying to, he may want Emma, and he's justifying to Joseph Knight Sr., who's telling this part of the story, right, that he needs to have her in order to acquire this treasure. And so that becomes a mechanism of encouragement and motivation for Joseph Knight Sr. to help Joseph Smith to obtain Emma and elope with her, because it's part of getting the treasure and Joseph Knight Sr. wants the treasure, right? Just like
that's a good point, because Joseph Knight Sr. has paid him to go do digs. He's not getting paid here, but I can help you get this woman to go and help you get the treasure. If he tells him, I need a woman to go get the treasure, Joseph Knight says, "Oh, okay, well, I'll help you get this woman," which he did. They were married in his house, weren't they? Wasn't that where they got married?
Just down the road, but
Down
yes,
the road,
yeah. But just the Joseph Knight Sr. made that happen, and so it's quite possible that Joseph told him this story about the right person, and that Emma was the right person, and that if Joseph Knight Sr. would help him to get Emma, that then Joseph Knight would be a recipient of some of that fortune. And that's one of the reasons why Joseph Knight is there on that particular night, come to visit the Smiths, because he wants to see that fulfilled. Yeah. He's expecting that that's going to be fulfilled.
He's very invested. It was his buggy, wasn't it?
It's his buggy, yes.
Yeah, it's his buggy and everything. So I can see that. Joseph is like, I need to elope with Emma. I need help. I'm going to tie it to the treasure, and I'm going to get somebody who's heavily invested in it by saying, you got to help me with Emma, and then you'll get your treasure. All those things make sense.
Yeah.
To me,
so when he goes to the hill, he has
story.
to have Emma, and because he's made this story up with Joseph Knight, and then at the same time, he's got to go and produce it. Now he's got to produce plates. Joseph Knight and Stoll, right? Stoll's there also that night. They're both there. They know what's supposed to happen this night. It's every night on this special night, the equinox, which is Joseph's special night with the Jupiter and the sky and the different things that we read about. This was his night, and to be the night to get the plates, and also when you think about it, this would be the night to conceive a child, would make it really special to Joseph. So it starts to make sense.
And we have some corroborating evidence, which I'm trying to suggest that it's not just one person saying these things, that we've got some, crossover. And this is actually Henry Harris' statement, who's Martin Harris's brother. He said, after he pretended to find gold plates, I had a conversation with him and asked him where he found them and how he came to know where they were. He said he had a revelation from God that told him that they were hid in a certain hill, and he looked in his stone and he saw them in the place of deposit. Then an angel appeared and told him he could not get the plates until he was married, and that when he saw the woman that was to be his wife, he should know her, and she would know him. He then went to Pennsylvania, got his wife, and they both went together and got the gold plates. He said it was revealed to him that no one must see the plates but himself and his wife.
Well, that's interesting because she never saw the plates.
No, she didn't.
Especially not that night.
Yeah.
So, and we know from Dr. Cumorah, section 25, that she murmured because she wasn't chosen as a witness. So she wasn't chosen to have this kind of a manifestation, and she was chastised by the Lord that it wasn't for everybody to see, and she just had to wait patiently. So just interesting that and I think well hopefully by the time we finish this too, you'll see that Joseph is telling a lot of stories to different people, different pieces that align, because you can tell that they're hearing it from him, but he's crafting his narrative. He's telling people different bits and pieces. It seems like he's the tricky one, right? Because he's the one who's kind of setting up the circumstance that's not being fulfilled. So then therefore that's the reason why he hasn't got the things. It's this is a treasure guardian, but he's the treasure guardian trickster.
The fact that he's he says, oh, as soon as they found out I had the plates, they all were after me. Well, how did they even know you were looking for plates unless you're the one who told everybody that you were going to go get plates? And he's clearly done that. He's clearly told multiple people that there's plates in the hill that he's going to go get. And not just anybody, he's telling his treasure digging friends who have spent a lot of money trying to find treasure with him. And of course, they're thinking, anything you find belongs partially to us because we've been financing this operation for so long. And that's exactly why they stopped by, and that's why they're there the night of the 22nd, is they want to know where their treasure is.
Yeah, well, they want to return on the investment, right? Because they've done lots of lovely things for Joseph, and now they want their return. So Do you want to read this one, Linda? So this is more from Joseph Knight Sr., and he's kind of our base for this kind of understanding.
Okay, it says nothing material took place until toward fall the forepart of September. I went to Rochester on business and returned by Palmyra to be there about the 22nd of September. I was there several days. I will say there was a man nearby by the name Samuel Lawrence. He was a seer, and he had been to the hill and knew about the things in the hill, and he was trying to obtain them. He, Joseph Smith Jr., had talked with me and told me the conversation he had with the personage, which told him if he would do right according to the will of God, he might obtain the 22nd day of September next, and if not, he never would have them. So Samuel Lawrence was the other seer who saw the sword and different things when he was looking in the ground. They're both walking around the ground looking at it. So
trying to one-up each other about how good a seer they are, right?
Oh, I see that. Oh, no, I see that. Oh, really? Well, I see that. Yeah. Oh, ridiculous.
But this adds weight to that idea that, Joseph's told him this is what's going to happen. And so that's why he's engineered his business trip so that he can be at the Smith's home on this particular date. And he talks about being there several days, and it suggests that he's there, several days, prior and several days, after, which, again, so, if he's in the house, I mean, this doesn't stop sex from happening, I guess, but in a full house, chances are that there's a lot going on in the house prior, at least, and also after, that makes the night of the 22nd and this alone time that Joseph and Emma is having on the hill to be the most likely time when the conception happens. One of the other things that I thought might be worth just talking about briefly is a few stories about the ways that Joseph kind of got resources from people, and particularly around telling treasure stories in order to get travel. So, Joseph is trying to get back and forth to Harmony, Pennsylvania. Emma's there, Emma's family's there, but he has no money. And he's got a gammy leg, he doesn't walk very well. So it's not like he can just walk down to Harmony, Pennsylvania, like his brother Samuel and Oliver did when they came to visit. He needs transport. He needs somebody to take him, or he needs money in order to go back and forth on the stagecoach. So he needs to convince people that there's a good reason to take him from one place to the other. And so he has a few of these stories. And this also involves Samuel Lawrence. So I wonder if, Rebecca, do you want to read this one?
Yeah, for sure. Treasure stories for travel with no advanced plan. And that's such a good point, Ganesh. I didn't really think about that. He is restricted in that way that he can't just get up and go. He really has to find a way. So that's very interesting. This is Willard Chase, 1833. In the fall of 1826, he wanted to go to Pennsylvania to be married. But being destitute of means, he now set his wits to work, how he should raise money and get recommendations to procure the fair one of his choice. He went to Lawrence with the following story, as related to me by Lawrence himself, that he had discovered in Pennsylvania, on the bank of the Susquehanna River, a very rich mine of silver. And if he would go there with him, he might have a share in the profit. That it was near high water mark, and that they could load it into the boats and take it down the river to Philadelphia to market. Lawrence then asked Joseph if he was not deceiving him. No, he said. No, said he, for I have been there and I've seen it with my own eyes. And if you do not find it so when we get there, I will bind myself to be your servant for 3 years. Again, it's a freaking fairy tale. I've read more fairy tales than most. It's a fairy tale. He's playing a magical game, and these are all the earmarks of a fairy tale. I will bind myself to be your servant for 3 years. By these grave and fair promises, Lawrence was induced to believe something in it and agreed to go with him. Lawrence soon found that Joseph was out of money and he had to bear his expenses on the way. When they got to Pennsylvania, Joseph wanted Lawrence to recommend him to Miss Hale, that's Emma, which he did, although he was asked to do it, but could not well get rid of it as he was in his company. Lawrence then wished to see the silver mine, and he and Joseph went to the river and made search, but found nothing. Surprise, surprise. Thus, Lawrence had his trouble for his pains and returned home lighter than he went, while Joseph got his expenses borne and a recommendation to his girl. Joseph is just a slick one, isn't he? That's a great story.
How come he didn't end up being the servant for 3 years? Is that
because that's absolutely absurd. I mean, it's just.
But that does show why Samuel Lawrence and he might have had a bit of a falling out, right?
Right, for sure.
That effectively he's used Samuel to get to Harmony, Pennsylvania, and then he's reneged on his promises, and
Well, it's funny to me that another treasure seer didn't trust the other treasure seer. Are you sure you're seeing a treasure? You're not just lying to me, are you?
These seer stones are not very reliable if you can't check on other people's work.
That's right.
Do you want to read this one, Landon? This is another story from Willard Chase that I think demonstrates the same point.
Okay, more treasure stories for travel. Willard Chase, 1833. Now, being still destitute of money, he set his wits at work how he should get back to Manchester, his place of residence. He hit upon the following plan, which succeeded very well. He went to an honest old Dutchman by the name of Stoll and told him that he had discovered on the bank of Black River in the village of Waterton, Jefferson County, New York, a cave in which he had found a bar of gold as big as his leg and about 3 or 4 feet long, that he could not get it out alone on account of it being fastened at one end, not to mention it would be extremely heavy. And if he would move him to Manchester, New York, they would go together and take a chisel and mill it and get it. And Stoll should share the prize with him. Stoll moved him. A short time after their arrival at Manchester, Stoll reminded Joseph of his promise, but he calmly replied that he would not go because his wife was now among strangers and would be very lonesome if he went away. Mr. Stoll was then obligated to return without any gold and with less money than he came.
He's just brilliant. I mean, seriously. And then think, what this makes me think of is that then later on, when he is creating the D&C, he doesn't need these stories. He's just able to say, the Lord has told me that you need to take me from here to there, or the Lord has told me you need to build me this or that. It's the same way that he's doing things, except for now he has the backing of the Lord, and all those revelations are just like this. I need something. I'm going to put it in the D&C. The Lord has told me to tell you that you need to do this for me.
You need to build me a house. This is
how it operates. Yeah, build me a house. That's right. Take me from here to there. Do this. Yeah, he's just, I have to say, brilliant in the way that he's doing this. He's so good at manipulating people.
And the treasure changes, right? Lord says that Zion is in Jackson County, Missouri. Mm-hmm. The Lord says Anandai is in Davis County, Missouri. The Lord says that we're going to be build a big city in Nauvoo, Illinois. The treasure has changed in the sense that it's now it's coming from a divine source and being promised, and then of course all of those fall over. Jackson County, Missouri falls over. Davis County, Missouri falls over.
The Kirtland Banking Society that he told everyone to invest in fell over. Yeah.
But people are moving, and they're moving him. To make that happen. Okay, I've got this last one, and on the same vein.
Just to clarify, this story is when he went back. He got the ride there from
Stoll.
From the previous guy,
Samuel Lawrence.
Lawrence, and then he gets a ride back from Stoll with Emma and their stuff. He moved their stuff even for him That's probably where the church started with moving people in, was this life right here.
Are you saying Stoll was the first Elders Quorum president who was the only one that showed up at the move?
Right. Yeah,
okay,
got
it.
Yeah. Found out he was moving them across country. Yeah, well, and that's one of the reasons that Stoll is there, right? Because he wants a return on investment. He's put, he's been put out in terms of time and money, and maybe Joseph promised him, look, well there's going to be this thing in the future, and so Josiah Stoll is there with his friend Joseph Knight Sr. And look, these men are older. These are not young guys. These are old enough to be, his parents, and he's lived with them, both of them, and worked for them. Like they're heavily invested together, and they're from the same culture, treasure digging, folk magic culture, and so they're investing in these ideas. They're investing in these stories. They're investing in Joseph as this, seer that's going to deliver. There's a lot of
all these guys are hanging around waiting for this treasure because you've got Stoll, you've got Knight they're there on the night. And we know Samuel Lawrence was working with other seers trying to get the treasure from him before he could get it. They were trying to, and then after he said he had it, I think him and wasn't it Chase's daughter that had the seer stone, and they tried to find where he was hiding them and everything. These are the exact people that are right there when the Book of Mormon plates are supposedly found.
What's the faithful narrative on this? I mean, how do they explain that these guys were all at the house?
Oh, well, Joseph Knight Sr. is a faithful member, right? So his account is that he knows that this is going to happen, that Emma's the right person, that this is destined to happen, that
But he's not there for a book, right? He's there for gold. He's there for the value. He's not there because he thinks, oh, we're going to get a great book out of this.
Yes, well, initially correct, but of course that story morphs and changes by 1830, and now it's about the publication of the Book of Mormon. So we're talking 3 years earlier, and that's where this kind of whole treasure digging, gold acquisition is really at its most fertile. But Josiah Knight joins the church, so does Josiah Stoll and Joseph Knight Sr. both joined the church. They are both faithful members. They're talking in retrospect with these stories in a kind of more faithful way, but you can see the undercurrent of the treasure digging narrative that they had invested in, but now they've reframed it, just like Joseph has reframed it for the church.
Yeah, and that's what I think I meant is that, it's got to be reframed. It's got to be re-engineered to be a spiritual, religious event, when in reality, they were just hanging out going, hey, we've been digging forever. Let's get that gold. What is that? Where is that? Right? It was only later that it took on the religious significance. And of course, that's what you hear in gospel doctrine class and Come Follow Me. Yeah, we don't talk about these statements because these are the ones that are published by E.D. Howell and his Mormonism Unveiled in 1834. So these are all anti-Mormon lies. But if you take, for instance, these people are telling the truth from their perspective, and the information that they're saying, you can correlate with faithful sources like Joseph Knight Sr., like Lucy Mack Smith, like Joseph's history of the church. So we can cross-reference them, and there are bits that are out, of course, but there's enough to be able to qualify what is being said and give it some reliability. There's even more. Like this is one of my favorite stories. This is Abigail Harris. So she's the sister-in-law to Martin Harris, and she says the old lady, because she's visiting with Lucy Mack Smith, said also that after the book was translated, the plates were to be publicly exhibited. Admittance 25 cents, just like the mummies. Just like the mummies.
She calculated it would bring an annually an enormous sum of money. That money would then be very plenty, and the book would also sell for a great price, as it was something entirely new that they had been commanded to obtain all the money they could borrow for present necessity and to repay with gold. The old lady took me into another room, and after closing the door, she said, "Have you $4 or $5 in money that you could lend until our business is brought to a close? The Spirit has said you shall receive fourfold." I told her that when I gave, I did not expect to receive again. As for money, I had none to lend. I then asked her what her particular want of money was, to which she replied, "Joseph wants to take the stagecoach, and come home from Pennsylvania to see what we are all about." To which I replied, "He might look in his stone and save his time and money."
I know that they want to say these are anti-Mormon, but these line up with the Joseph Smith that we all know from his, not we all know, obviously we didn't know when we were in the church what kind of young man he was, but when you know the actual young man, this is Joseph. He is a treasure digger. He is poor. He is he's grafting, stealing away his wife from her family. And it sounds like from this that Lucy is the same type of person, and she's selling entrance to mummies. She wants to sell entrance to the Book of Mormon. We know she did the mummies, so why is this questionable? This seems to be very in line with what Lucy Mack Smith would do if she had the gold plates, because this is what she did when she had the mummies. So it lines up.
Yeah, that's very clever. And the idea that, I mean, the Smiths are desperate. They're getting evicted from their house because they no longer own the land, right? So Joseph is trying desperately to provide for them. He has nothing either, right? All he has is stories, and he's selling his stories to get resources like travel from one place to another. And he's also suggesting, or at least saying to his parents, particularly Lucy, that she can invest on these stories and get a return, and that's what she's telling to other people around her in order to get the resources that she needs, because they also have nothing, right?
And this is the same thing. This is the same thing they told the people in Kirtland a few years later. Invest your money and you'll receive a fourfold or whatever. You're gonna.
Can't fail. The Lord has decreed it.
The Lord has your back.
But now it's the Lord. It's not I'm looking in my stone or a treasure guardian. Now it's the Lord. You can see how it just morphs.
Yeah. It's so fascinating. And, and it's the same thing over and over again, slightly different stories, but they're all they have very similar qualities about them, which is just so fascinating, isn't it? All right. And maybe Rebecca, do you want to read this one?
Yes. Joseph Knight Sr. is worried about a neighbor seer. Now, Joseph was some afraid of him. This is Samuel Lawrence, that he might be a trouble to him. He therefore sent his father up to Sam's, as he called him, near night to see if there was any signs of him going away that night. He told his father to stay till near dark, and if he saw any signs of him going, you tell him. Again, if only we could read these in gospel doctrine. You tell him, if I find him there, I will thrash the stumps with him. So the old man, Joseph Smith Sr., came away and saw no thing like it. This is to show the troubles he had from time to time to obtain the place. So he was worried about Samuel Lawrence trying to go and kind of, weasel in on his business there.
Yeah. And it also kind of shows that even prior to that particular night, the family was on high alert.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm suggesting that Joseph and Neiman not having sex really the few nights before, because the family's on high alert. They're worried about other people infringing, that Josiah stole and Joseph Knight Sr. have come. The house is full. Any creak or bump or it might, it's going to be noticed, right? And the privacy is definitely not there. So there's some good reasons why Joseph and Emma are not alone, or at least don't feel confident enough to engage in sex.
Right. And it's not their priority. I mean, all this other stuff is the priority. It's leading up to this incredible event. So were you going to say something, Landon?
Yeah, I was going to say, of course, he has to be worried about Samuel Lawrence because Samuel Lawrence knows he goes there every 22nd of September. Yeah. And he was there with him looking in a hat. So he knows, tonight's the night. He's going to go up there and try to find these plates again. I maybe need to go and follow him and see if he gets the treasure so I can take it from him. So, this is why Joseph has to send his dad to go keep an eye on him. But at the same time, he's got someone keeping an eye out to keep the coast clear for him and Emma. So.
And look at this. If he does see him make a move, he's going to just completely beat the you-know-what out of him, is what he's saying.
That's not very Christian.
No, that's not. I'm going to say thrash the stumps. I like that.
It's better that one man be thrashed to stumps than a whole generation dwindle in unbelief.
I think that's part of the scriptures. You're right.
Have to accumulate those things. So and Will and Chase kind of can, when we were talking earlier, Rebecca, about the whole idea of these, maybe ceremonies, these tricks that the guardian is playing or asking that Joseph does things exactly. And so the Smiths are doing these kind of magical ceremonies, trying to do the thing which will secure the treasure in some way or another. And so Willard Chase talks about this in relation to the acquisition of the plates. So Landon, do you want to take us through that?
Yeah, again, Willard Chase. On the 22nd of September, 1823, he must repair to the place where was deposited this manuscript, dressed in black clothes and riding a black horse with a switch tail, and demand the book in a certain name. And after obtaining it, he must go directly away and neither lay it down nor look behind him. They accordingly fitted out Joseph with a suit of black clothes and borrowed a black horse.
This is a fairy tale.
So this is 1823. Gosh. So he's wearing the black. He's wearing the black when he goes in 1823, and he doesn't get the plates in 1823. But he's doing the ceremony. A few weeks after
they're trying different things every year to try to do this, right? Because the guardian keeps tricking them, right? Says, bring Alvin, and then Alvin dies, and so are we going to bring a part of Alvin? No, that's not enough. Well, was it Samuel Lawrence? No, it's not. Well, then it's Emma. There's this trickster guardian who they're just trying to outwit. I mean, that's the story that Joseph is telling them, of course, because everybody in the folk magic culture is, believing this. It's hard to tell whether Joseph is playing this up or he's using those as excuses or he fully believes as well. And, but the upshot is that there's all of these kind of requirements, and then, it's just out of reach, and, we just lost at that time. Maybe we'll do it right this next time. But it allows Joseph to acquire resources and to justify particular things that are going on.
But it's so problematic when you realize that the trickster treasure guardian is speaking for God. So when it morphs into more of a religious story, they have to really kind of soften that part. God is a dick, if I can say that. Again, the entire salvation of all of humanity rests on this God going, bring this person up. Okay, he's dead. No, do this. That is absolutely ridiculous. And I can understand why the faithful narrative, they kind of play that part down. The things that we know, the stories, the reasons that he didn't get it. It's a farce. It's absurd. It's a fanciful fairy tale. So I don't know.
Yeah, poor Joseph. He's wearing black clothes and a black horse, and what he really needed was a white shirt and tie with a black name tag. If he'd have just brought that, he'd have got the Book of Mormon. Oh
my gosh.
So 1827, a few weeks after this conversation, 1827, he came to my house and related the following story. That on the 22nd of September, he arose early in the morning and took a one-horse wagon of someone that had stayed overnight at their house without leave or license. and together with his wife repaired to the hill which contained the book. He left his wife in the wagon by the road and went alone to the hill, a distance of 30 or 40 rods from the road. He said he then took the book out of the ground and hid it in a treetop and returned home. Boy, it's a lot safer in a treetop than it would have been in this stone box. That it's a good thing he waited 4 years for treasure God to say, well, you brought the right woman. Here you go. Go put it in a tree.
And so he moved it from here to there.
But not just the plates. He would have to move the breastplates, the seer stones, the Leahona. All of this had to get put up in this tree, evidently, so that he could go. There's a lot of holes in this story if you follow the church's narrative on this. But there's not holes if you're thinking magic. If you're thinking magic tradition, there are no holes. This is what you do on a treasure.
It's a fairy tale. I'm going to say that over and over. It has all the earmarks. It is a fairy tale.
And gosh, and to me too, if you play this forward as if you didn't know what happened, you could be mistaken for thinking that Joseph really doesn't have a plan, right? Maybe he's just trying to appease Emma, and he's thinking, oh gosh, we'll go out on a buggy ride, I'll give her an adventure, we'll reconnect in some romantic way, and then the next day he's got to explain how come he's taken Joseph Knight Sr.'s buggy in the middle of the night, and they're gone all night long, so then he has to justify that with, oh well, actually I've got the plates, like it's the thing. In fact, I think that's the next.
Yeah, being gone all night was not something that I necessarily realized or remembered, that they didn't come back until after breakfast, right?
Yeah,
according to Lucy. I mean, again, you ask, what is going on? How long is he up on the hill? Is she really just standing there for 8 hours, waiting for him to come back down? I don't think so.
Well, that's, and that's what you just said, is confirmed by Joseph Knight Sr., because that's what he says. He says, so that night we all went to bed, and in the morning Joseph Knight Sr. got up and my horse and carriage was gone. But after a while, Joseph Smith Jr., came home and he turned out the horse. They all came into the house for breakfast, but no one said a thing about where he'd been after breakfast. Joseph called me into the other room and he set down his foot on the bed and leaned his head into his hands and said, well, I am disappointed. Well, say I am sorry. Well, say he, I am greatly disappointed. It is 10 times better than I expected. Then he went on to tell in great length and width, thickness of the plates, and said that they appeared to be gold. But he seemed to think more of the glasses, or the Urim and Thummim, which actually that's a term later, right? So it's seer stone, than he did of the plates. For he said, I can see anything that they are marvelous. Now they are written in characters, and I want them translated. So this, it could be that he's just using this story to appease Joseph Knight Sr. for taking his buggy without permission, and he says, well, he's deposited in the woods, and he's got to go back and get them, and now he's got to come up with actually something to bring home, and you can imagine that this is just a story on top of a story in order to support a particular resource, like taking the buggy for the night with Emma for a romantic getaway. It's just.
Well, he does give us an indication what he's doing. He says, I think he seemed to think more of the glasses than he did of the plates, which would make sense because this is what he does. He looks into stones. The plates, he didn't even use the plates. He used the stone to translate. And so, it sounds like he spent all night looking at Urim and Thummim and going, oh, I can see everything, because he clearly put them on or tried something, because he's saying he can see anything. So he must have been looking at them if they were real, which none of us believe. But this is the claim is, oh, I found these great seer stones. So and then he also said he gives them the length, the width, and the thickness, and they appear to be gold. This is Joseph the gold digger.
Yeah.
These aren't, what are they saying? They had the appearance of gold. They weren't real gold. you don't think this guy knows what gold looks like when he's a gold digger? This is what he's looking for his whole life. He's going to know what gold, if he says they appear to be gold. He didn't say they appear to be gold colored. He says they appear to be gold. So again, this just goes back to the weight issue with them. And it becomes a problem. You can't say there's some hybrid when he's the gold digger.
Well, those Nephites and Lamanites were great metallurgists. We learned that at the Church History Museum when a wonderful guide told us that they were expert metallurgists and that their handiwork was in museums all over the East. And that's when Landon said, no, they're not. And he got this glazed look in his eye. And I'm like, okay, Landon, let's go somewhere else. You're okay. So, but it's interesting how and this I think is thinking like a treasure digger. Think about the other bar of gold. It's 3 feet long. It's a foot wide. It's like my leg, right? He's describing gold, and how much there is of it. And here he's also telling him it's going to be this wide and the pages are this, he's thinking about the value of the gold, or he's telling a story knowing that his audience is thinking about the value of the gold and curious, how big is it? How big of a gold bar? How big of a gold book?
It's this big.
Yeah, no, that's the focus. And you can just picture him making stuff up on his feet, thinking on his feet. And I think of the pressure that must be, right? If you tell one little story or lie, and then you have to keep repeating it or embellishing it or explaining it and remembering, I got to do this and this. But I think he thrived on that. He was so good at that. I mean, look at that description. He comes in, puts his foot up on the bed, I was out there. I found him. He is in his wheelhouse here, and he can get people to do whatever he wants by spinning these stories. That's his skill.
It's an MLM, and they're all invested.
Exactly. No, I mean, Landon and I, over Christmas, we were in Branson, and in order to go, we accidentally bought like a package, which was a travel timeshare kind of a thing, so we had to go and hear this pitch, right, to get some of the perks. And it was just like that. I mean, those guys were slick, and they were spinning the stories, and they were telling us stuff, and Landon just kept looking in their eyes and going, I'm not going to do that. We kind of did good cop, bad cop. I was more like, oh, this seems amazing, but probably not right now. And Landon's like, that's not worth it. I just crunched the numbers. I'm not doing that, but the people, it was actually hilarious. But the people that were, and there were a series of different people speaking, they all had this gift like Joseph Smith, able to tell a story, able to spin it, able to try to put aside any fear or argument that a person would bring up. Like all of these people, like, well, what do you mean? No, you don't understand. So I think we all know people like this. And I think this was Joseph to a T.
And that appeal to the idea that you're going to be rich, that you're on the cusp of something great, if only you just followed through with the next bit. These are very emotional, emotive types of ways of bargaining people into whatever story you are telling.
These guys have spent years with Joseph looking for treasure, going on treasure digs.
Yeah.
So when he comes in and goes, I got it, that had to just be thrilling to those guys.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And they just go, where? Let us see it, So then he has to have a reason he can't show it to him. Yeah. Well, God told me I couldn't show it to anyone.
Yeah. I had to hide it in the woods. You can't see it right now, but you believe me, it's right there. We just, sorry you have to go home tomorrow. But I'll bring it down to visit you later. All these little excuses. This was just my I found this photo. I thought it was quite cute. Couple going out for a moment together alone. I think that this Joseph must have really relished this, right? The Smiths had horses, but they did not have a buggy. They were too poor. So the idea that he and Emma could actually just go out, they could borrow, they didn't ask for permission to borrow this buggy, right? So, but it must have been a bit of a thrill. Emma probably had a horse and buggy in her past life in Harmony, and suddenly Joseph has produced the goods this night. They've gone out alone. They're away from the family. There's no distractions. Yeah, the hill must have felt a lot more appealing. And
that's a great point. This is like showing up with a limo,
Yeah,
exactly.
He can't provide this. And so this night he shows up with a limo and takes her out on his special night to go get the plates.
And how long had they been married at this point? It was only
about 9 months.
9 months. That's what I thought. And I mean, seriously, think about this. Any newlywed, and you're still newlywed within a year of being married couple, late at night, out alone, it's dark, you've got a limo, you've got a buggy. Every newlywed couple is going to do that. They're just going to do that. That's what you do when you're a newlywed couple. And especially if you've had those impediments in the house of having like 12 people, 9 people around you and thin walls and stress and all that kind of, you're going to do that. And then you add on top of that the idea that I feel like there might have been a magical ceremonial component to it. I really do feel like that. Sex is powerful. Love charms are powerful. And as you showed us in our last podcast, some of the statements about Joseph thinking there would be a future child that would be very special and be the only one that could see the plates. I just feel like all that kind of comes together, and I feel there's no way that they would not have done that.
And I want to point out, Rebecca, if you feel that it's true, it must have happened.
It's true.
Yeah.
I feel a burning in my bosom over the fact that I believe that this is what happened. So, yeah.
Well, Lucy Mack reports that Emma got dressed up, like it was a big deal, and I think that too, Joseph may have convinced her that her part in this was really necessary for this magic to continue, just like he may have done with Josiah Stoll and with Joseph Knight Sr., that they had a part in making this happen, and it would not happen unless she did her part, and her part was solidify this relationship. We're going to consummate it, maybe. We're going to engage in it. This love ceremony on the hill will bring forth the treasure. You're like, it's a really big part. So what happens after that night? We've kind of talked in infinitum about the idea that there, things are busy, but prior to that particular night, the only bit of alone time Joseph and Emma are getting is that night on the hill in the buggy by themselves. And we kind of get a good idea that they don't have much of a moment of peace after that night, at least for the next little while. Do you want to take us through this, Rebecca?
Yes, this constant harassment after the 22nd. Well, of course, he told everybody he had a treasure. Joseph Smith History 160. I soon found out the reason why I had received such strict charges to keep them safe, and why it was that the messenger had said that when I had done what was required at my hand, he would call for them. For no sooner was it known that I had them. And again, you have to ask, how was it known that you had them? Because you freaking told everybody. I mean, come on. No sooner was it known that I had them than the most strenuous exertions were used to get them from me. Every stratagem that could be invented was resorted to for that purpose. The persecution became more bitter and severe than before, and multitudes were on the alert continually to get them from me, if possible, which is so interesting, because the faithful spin then is, oh no, they wanted to stop the gospel from coming forth. No, it's his treasure digging friends going, yeah, we found it. Remember how I supported you for the last 5 years? Yeah. And now you have something. Let's see it. I mean,
and you tell someone, funny. I got a chunk of gold this wide and this big. You don't think everyone's going to try to get it from you? They're not trying to stop the work of the gospel from going. No. They're trying to get the gold that you're telling everyone you have.
Yep, that's it. So, and then he goes on to say, but by the wisdom of God, they remained safe in my hands until I had accomplished by them what was required at my hand. And then Lucy Mack goes on to say in 1845, He then said that a mob would be there that night if they did not come before that time to search for the record, and that it must be removed immediately. And Joseph Knight Sr. said, so they had to guard the house until sometime in November. So you're right, Ganesh. It sounds like everything would have been kind of in chaos for, at least a month afterwards, with people stopping by, people coming over, people knocking on the door. Yeah, it doesn't seem like there would be any, even just mentally with all that going on, you just wouldn't be in the headspace to probably have a romantic or quiet moment. It sounds like chaos, actually, and dangerous, but again, it's his treasure digging crew going, hey, okay, let's pay up, right? It has nothing to do with religion, the gospel. That wasn't even a factor then.
And I think that Joseph kind of relished this.
Yeah.
Like what you're saying, he wanted to be the big man. He wanted to be the success. He wanted to, be in charge of the treasure. And so he probably just really, just was having a ball with everybody, kind of trying to get them off him. And, he doesn't have anything, of course. So they're never going to find it. But everybody believes that he has. And so they're out to prove, either out to prove him right by his family trying to make the same case, or they're those treasure digging past friends who are trying to get it off him. He just knows exactly what's going on. So he's one up on all of them.
Yeah, and the whole family is in the spotlight now. It's pretty exciting and dangerous and chaotic. The whole family, they're all like, oh, no, this is happening at our house. We have plates. Oh, can't show you, but we've got them, right? National Enquirer's outside. They've got plates. So, yeah, I can see that. And they love it.
If you bring over a loaf of bread and a little bit of stew, we'll sit down and tell you the story.
Yeah, 25 cents and I'll tell you the story. Yep. Oh, it's an opportunity. That's for sure.
And what were you going to say, Landon? But by the wisdom of God, they were safe in my hand. The wisdom of God and the stupidity of you by telling everybody again. Why wasn't God so wise as to tell him, don't tell anybody?
Yeah, I think he did say that, but.
And these are the references I used in the last podcast, a couple of them, and then also one extra, just showing that Joseph at the very least connected this pregnancy to the Book of Mormon and the gold plates, and so that's a really good indication that he believed that this ceremony or this thing that he had done with Emma was successful and bringing forth something. And so this story about the young child who would be really special, and maybe we could just read them. Landon, do you want to read them for us?
Yeah, this is the Isaac Hill affidavit of 1834 that we talked about last time. They gave me to understand that the Book of Plates was in the box, into which, however, I was not allowed to look. I inquired of Joseph Smith Jr., who was to be the first who would be allowed to see the Book of Plates. He said it was a young child. Sophia Lewis, which is a cousin?
Emma's cousin, yes.
Emma's cousin. So this is family, Emma's dad and Emma's cousin. So these aren't enemies.
Contemporary.
Of the Smiths.
It's not a late source. I don't know why these are. Why? Anyway.
Yeah, and her cousin's present when the baby's born. She states that she heard Smith say the Book of Plates could not be opened under penalty of death by any other person but his, Smith's, firstborn, which was to be a male. She says she was present at the birth of this child and that it was stillborn and very much deformed. And then Willard Chase statement of 1833, Martin Harris reported that the prophet's wife in the month of June following would be delivered of a male child that would be able, when 2 years old, to translate the Gold Bible.
So this is the special child, and again, it smacks. If you didn't know what happened, and you're playing this out in real time and advancing it, you get from these statements the idea that when Joseph Smith was talking about the plates early on, and the idea of it being something special, that he made that connected to his son, and he delayed that idea that it would be something special for another couple of years. Mm-hmm. It ended up changing because, of course, Martin Harris invested in this project, and he came and scribed for Joseph. And also, of course, the baby Alvin died on the 15th of June when he was born. So the that this particular story, this particular understanding, that story was dead in the water. Excuse the pun. But
it's interesting. These people do not live near each other that are given this. Isaac Hill's in Pennsylvania. Sophia Lewis, I'm not sure where she was from, but didn't she come to visit for the
Yes,
birth?
well, she's not far away, so this is in Harvey as well. But Willard Chase is in Palmyra.
But he's told this by Martin Harris, who was staying at the Isaac Hill's at the cabin at Isaac Hill's place and talked to Isaac Hill. So two guys that are there when the baby is born. Well, Martin had just left when the baby was born, but these guys were right around when he's talking about this, and right as the baby's being born, or just before, and they all three have the same story.
Did they start to translate though before the baby was born?
Yes, they did.
Yes. So then,
so this story actually, Isaac Hale, so that when he talks about this, he's talking back in the November, December of 1827, and Willard Chase is talking about Martin Harris back in February of 1828, so even before the translations happening. So these stories are changing because the circumstances changing, and Joseph is evolving and he's doing different things. And of course, because the baby eventually ends up dying, then this is dropped from the narrative. So,
and of course, nobody after that date of the death of the child is going to hear this story from Joseph Smith, because obviously that's not going to happen.
The
story dies with the baby. And here you've got the people who knew Joseph prior to the baby saying this, and the people who know him after don't say anything about it, which kind of shows you it dead ended at that point.
But I'm trying to understand, because he says only the child can see it. The child will translate it. Yet before the child's born, he sees it. He translates it.
Yeah. So, he's looking in the seer stone, of course. So he's seeing it in the esoteric realm.
That's true. He's doing. They're not even in the room. You're right. You're right. Okay.
He's explaining it to people, in ways that they can't see it anyway. So,
Yeah. It reminds me of kind of a Christ child narrative, honestly.
Yeah, that's what I was
thinking. Sort of a special conception, and then a child who, like Jesus, can preach in the temple when he's very young and knows more than the rabbis. Here's a child that can translate at age 2. It is sort of a Christ child trajectory.
Yeah. And that's right. I mean, it's part of this whole kind of magic, religious folk, understanding that'll help to give him legitimacy, and also time to craft something. Exactly. or to he's many ways, lots of people who are critics of the Book of Mormon and its coming forth suggest that Joseph has made this grand plan many years in advance. But when I look at the evidence and look at the text of the Book of Mormon as well, I see a guy who's winging it in the moment, and a lot of the things that are happening as the situation unfolds in the space that he is in with the people who are around him. He may have had some stories he was telling way earlier, and he may have thought about some narratives, but actually this was an evolving project that was happening in the moment. There doesn't seem to be a lot of great pre-planning beforehand. It seems to all happen as the circumstance dictates, which makes the Book of Mormon quite dynamic. It makes the evolving of the story really good in some ways, because it means that he's flexible, because he's not tied to a particular outcome or a particular storyline. He just goes with what feels right in the moment with the people around him. So it's so I think that that's also some of the ways that Joseph justified this, right? He's kind of searching around the dark, and he's finding a pathway forward, and feeling maybe even divinely inspired to take that path in the moment, just like we all do at some level in our life. lives. Yeah.
No, exactly. If you're a narcissist, you believe it. Oh, my wife is pregnant. It's going to be an incredible child. You believe it. You are thinking on your feet and you create a narrative that works and it influences and manipulates other people. And you can see him doing that throughout. And I think he does convince himself of these things. If
and
you're a
especially
narcissist and it's
if
all about you.
If your wife gets pregnant with this child on the very night you supposedly found these plates, which is on the equinox or solstice,
with his sign Jupiter,
with his signs and everything else, of course, everything lined up that this was a special child.
Yeah, that's an evidence right there, because Joseph would know pretty much. He'd go, yeah, we really haven't had sex for the last 2 weeks before this because of all the chaos. And we didn't have sex 2 weeks afterwards because of the chaos. It was that night. It did work. Therefore, my child will be, this, it makes sense that he would have this special purpose if he believed that the child was conceived that night as part of everything that happened at the Hill Cumorah.
Yeah. And that's basically it. Right. So, gosh, hopefully that gives a good, rigorous, reliable understanding of all of the circumstances around, and it gives good weight. I mean, as we said at the beginning, we can't know because these people did not, record in their journal. They didn't have journals. They weren't writing these things down. So we can't be 100% sure. But all of the physical evidence and the circumstantial evidence all point in the same direction and give a good measure of weight on it.
Right. And you cannot remove this from the magical tradition. That's the thing. Yes. Since, people 20 years ago, 30 years ago, not aware at all of the magical tradition or the folk magic that so heavily dictated everything that Joseph did, it wouldn't make any sense. But when you put that all together, ritual ceremonies, the power of sex, treasure digging, and love charms, so potently connected, right? That special night, his special sign Jupiter, all of that, when you put that together, it becomes a lot more easy to believe, I think there's something to that. So, which is why that's completely lost once it became a purely religious experience and religious tradition. Yeah. That has nothing in there. I mean, the story of the Christ child, that was an immaculate kind of, not really. We did an episode on that, right? But you know what I mean? That's not part of it. That is not part of it. But in the magical world, that's a huge part of it. Don't you think that's true, Landon? I think it's deeply rooted in the folk magic tradition.
We have the night in the barn, and now we have the night on the hill tied to Joseph.
The night on the hill.
I sit back and I go, what I would really want to see is I want to see the Hill Cumorah pageant with this story portrayed.
Like over to the side, there's a black buggy and it's kind of rocking back and forth.
Well, I think that this should be built into the narrative of how people should be celebrating on Moroni Day.
Moroni Day, gives you a new idea.
Okay,
we all look forward to it now.
Book of Mormon Central is always telling everybody, go celebrate. This makes a lot of sense. But you know what? The whole narrative again just makes me feel so sorry for Emma. Honestly, she's just kind of this pawn in everything. And it, I don't know. The more I learn, the more I just feel really, I know later she must have been complicit in some way, but what choice do you have when you're in that unfortunate situation? And that's probably how it was here too. So I don't know. I'm sure we'll have a lot of comments in the chat about this. I did ask, I asked Dan Vogel what he thought of that. And he said Michael Quinn had brought that up in his, magic world view. And, he said, oh, Michael Quinn's just trying to cause trouble, which I don't know. Michael Quinn, he was, he knew the magical tradition. He understood the folk magic. He understood that was Joseph's number one priority for everything was filtered through that lens. We can't even imagine that because we don't do that. I mean, some people wake up and read their horoscope, whatever. We don't do that. Not to the level that Joseph did it, where everything was dictated by the magical worldview.
And I think it bears repeating that you take the church's narrative and you try to line that up and you keep finding holes. You keep going, this doesn't make sense. Why did he get the plates and not take them back? Why did he hide them in a log? Mm-hmm. Why did Emma have to go? Why was he told Alvin had to go and then Alvin dies? there's all these questions and holes, but when you look at it from a magic world view, it's just another treasure dig, and the treasure just keeps slipping away. It fits perfectly with what Joseph was doing right up until that time, and continued to do even after he got the supposedly got the plates. So there's so many plot holes in the official narrative, but when you roll it through this, a lot of those questions get answered.
It's very compelling. I think it's a high level of reliability that this is, this explains what's going on very well.
Yeah, I think so too. So, well, thank you for bringing some more of the receipts. It is interesting to see it all put together like that. And it's definitely a provocative topic, and definitely lots of opinions on it. And again, we can never know. I mean, not really, but when you line all of this up, it just makes a lot of sense. You can't not know either. You can't say they didn't for sure, just like you can't say they did, but you can look at all of this, and I'd like to dig in a little more just on the idea of the child. I mean, I know there are probably just those statements, but like I said, I was really into magic when I was a kid. Fairy tales and witches and spells. I was really into all of that. Magic and all of this is just so familiar. Everything that he's doing and describing and his actions, having a person that's kind of like a medium or a familiar that you bring with you that you can channel power through. I mean, there's just so much there that was second nature to all of them in that tradition, but to the rest of us, we don't really recognize it. But that's why I keep saying it's like a fairy tale, because there's a lot there. So anyway, we would love to hear all of your thoughts. And I'm guessing that the comments have been buzzing with people saying, that's not true. You know who I'm talking about. Sorry, I have to laugh. Did you, just one last little thing. Did you guys, Matt Holland, President Holland's son, gave a devotional at BYU, just would be 2 weeks ago once we air this. And he said, the bottom line was, you must cling to the Book of Mormon, cling to it. And I think about President Holland, his father, who said you have to go over, around, under, through. They sure are into the physicality of doing something with that Book of Mormon. But, you can say that all you want, but here is a possible origin story for all of that. And not surprisingly, possibly rooted in sex. So that makes sense, doesn't it?
It wouldn't be Mormonism otherwise.
But wasn't rooted in sex, it's not Mormon. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. All roads lead back to polygamy and sex. That's exactly it.
That's the root of Mormonism, and then Mormonism rooted sex out.
Yeah. We can do a whole podcast on that.
The irony of it all.
The irony. That's exactly right. All right. Well, thanks for watching, everybody. And please like and subscribe to Mormonish Podcast. And if you'd like to be made aware of when new episodes come out, you can hit that notification bell. You can always make a donation to help support Mormonish Podcast. We are a nonprofit, and we do have links in the show notes where you can easily make a donation to Donor Box. And we sure appreciate everybody that does it. Really makes it possible for us to continue to do podcasts about sex, right? That's exactly right. So, and I'd love to thank, of course, Landon, my co-host, for being on, and Ganesh. We've done more episodes with Ganesh than anybody else, because we're always chatting on the side, and we're always like, this is interesting. Let's do a podcast. So, which I love. I love that you're so willing to share your knowledge and, let us all in on everything that you know, because it's amazing. Everybody go get Ganesh's book if you have not yet. It is out. I usually have it right here beside me to hold up. It must be over there. But yeah, please, everybody, there's so much of this in Ganesh's book where he really just shines a spotlight on all the stuff we've been talking about. So thank you, Ganesh. You're amazing.
You're welcome. And it's been so much fun.
All right. Thanks, everybody. And we will see you all next time on Mormonish Podcast. Bye, everybody.